Hello, I'm Alex Gorieron, one of your hosts for the JWU Explore from Home video podcast series. And we're very excited to share this university-wide initiative with everyone today. Our ongoing video series will focus on a different topic and include a conversation between a JWU professor, an alum, and a potential industry partner, and sharing some of their expertise and how their experiences at Johnson & Wales University have prepared them for their career today. Today's conversation will focus on food safety. Food safety has always been a priority as part of the curriculum at JWU, and we're really excited to further this conversation today with Bridget Sweet and Craig McMaster. Bridget Sweet, MS, REHS, RSCP, FS, is the Executive Director of Food Safety at Johnson & Wales University, and Bridget Sweet oversees the compliance of all safety standards set forth by government agencies and the university. She's an advocate for reliable and relevant food safety education and practices, and a member of several state and federal task forces. And currently, she's pursuing her doctorate at Northeastern University. And joining Bridget is Craig McMaster. He's with Big Y World Class Market, and he's the food safety trainer auditor. And he's also a 2008 Johnson & Wales graduate with a BA in food service management. And Craig provides training and guidance to Big Y distribution centers and store management regarding food safety practices. And through compliance audits, he also verifies employees' knowledge and compliance of those food safety policies. He also identifies opportunities to develop strategies to improve food safety. And in his job, he also interacts with sales, operations, facilities management, and government agencies regarding Big Y food safety policies. So welcome, Bridget and Craig. Thank you for joining us today. Food innovation and safety is vital to our lives, and the COVID pandemic proves that even more. And today we wanted to ask you to share with us some of the science behind food safety and possibly some of the new codes and guidelines that might be coming out and might be changed in today's environment. So I wanted to start our conversation there to kind of set where we're at in the industry in light of everything going on with COVID.
Sure. Craig, can I start?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
And thanks for the intro, Alex. Very, very kind. So I think it's really important to note that the food code has always been designed in scientific principles and in fact. So we get together every 2 years and we discuss food safety principles with industry partners, government partners, and academia, and we really make sure that the food code is relevant through the Conference for Food Protection. And a lot of the standards that we're seeing right now that are changing are not related to food safety per se, they're related to social distancing. So there's been no scientific evidence or transmission of COVID-19 being transmitted through a food or a contact surface. We're really worried about the social gatherings and the interactions there. And I'll push this back over to Craig because he actually had to suspend his salad bar operations. But again, it's not because we're worried about the salad bar or facility transferring COVID-19. It's more the social distancing aspect. Craig, so can you just tell us what you've done at Big Y in order to mitigate that risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I mean, it's not so much the food itself. A lot of people are worried that they're going to get it from consuming the food, but that's not necessarily the case. It's the congregation of everybody around those areas that becomes the issue. So in our stores and just about everywhere you're going nowadays, everywhere has some sort of distance markers or something on the floor with signage saying, please, respect social distancing, this and that. So all of the self-serve items that we've had in our locations have been shut down. And we've been pushed more towards prepackaged items, like, at-home kits, to-go items. Those have really picked up and ramped up to try to keep the flow of traffic through the stores. Or people start to congregate now, like the register areas or certain things. We try to keep people kind of on the go rather than stagnant and in conversation with each other.
That's a great point. And just to kind of piggyback off of that comment, can you speak to your glove policy in your stores? Because I feel like people think that gloves are this magic barrier and it's going to be this COVID bubble. And as we know, gloves are not magic. They don't protect you from the guidance in the food code are for gloves to protect the food from you, the food handler. So we know behind, back of house and behind the scenes that people are using gloves appropriately, but our number one defense really is hand washing. So what I see oftentimes when I go, I hate food shopping and I hate cooking, by the way. But when I go out to get groceries for my ginormous family, I see a lot of people shopping with gloves on. And I hear a lot of complaints from consumers worried that their cashier may not have gloves on. Can you just speak to why that may not be the best fit?
So we address that on a daily basis with customer complaints and concerns. A major thing is they don't have gloves on, they don't have this, but then we see people that come in wearing gloves, and they're wearing the same gloves the whole time they're in the store, touching the shopping carts, touching door handles, touching money, touching their phone. When they touch their face, they adjust the mask, they do all sorts of stuff, and it really is a false sense of security. That just traditional hand washing is really the best practice. It kind of, we joke and we laugh about it behind closed doors, but it's a serious issue that people see it, and they just, one pair of gloves is the kind of the magic answer to it, and it's really not.
It's definitely a hard conversation to have, especially, I have 4 boys, and my 13-year-old, a little bit of a germaphobe, and he's always like, they don't have gloves on. I'm like, they don't need gloves, just wash your hands. And it's a hard conversation. And I think that, again, it's that false sense of security that people think that gloves are magic. But again, the food code is designed to prescribe and really educate on proper hand washing. So we know that back of house, employees are trained to wash their hands. And I'm just curious, have you guys increased your hand washing protocols to be a little bit more frequent, just to mitigate some of that potential risk?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, like prescribing it has become an issue where we're actually logging and ensuring employees, whether they're food handlers or not, even the front of the stores, cashiers, that on a regular basis, they do leave their stations and go actually wash their hands and then use a hand sanitizer in addition to their hand washing practices. And then if they are using gloves, that they are changing them frequently. But as part of that, to wash their hands, not just to change a glove, because that doesn't really do much to just change a glove and you take your dirty hand and then you put it on your clean glove. Now that clean glove is dirty again. So the hand washing is the key component to it.
So currently I teach an advanced food safety class, and we try to bring in a different topic, every week as related to COVID and some of their practices. And they're definitely more cognizant of some of these risks. I'm just curious, I didn't go to Johnson & Wales. My background is public health and food safety. I went to Mass Maritime. How has your education at Johnson & Wales sort of enabled you to be successful in this sort of niche industry of food safety? I know that you graduated in 2008, right?
Yes. Yep.
And so the skills that you learned then, have those helped you prepare for this side of the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's funny, we kind of joke a lot of times where a lot of the stores think it's us versus them type of thing, the regulatory.
I know that from Whole Foods.
Yeah. But I think having that culinary and food aspect background has really kind of rounded me out as like a trainer and auditor, because my original background was food, and then kind of transitioning over helps me understand their pain points a little bit more, and I can help understand where they're coming from. So instead of just bringing them saying this is a new item we're doing or this is something that has to change, we like to go to the stores and say, where can we help you? What makes sense? What are your pain points? And we can really kind of alleviate some of the stress because we understand what they're dealing with. It's not just, I read it in a book somewhere, so this is how it's done. It's no daily practices and hands-on experience where it's an absolute game changer.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. And I think it's hard sometimes for me being a regulatory for so long and then going industry and now being here. Just because it works someplace else doesn't mean it's going to translate into our student experience here and outside of school. So I always try to have them mimic what they're doing, because a lot of our students work while they're in class. So we've used a lot of those examples as well. Even though we're sort of in this shutdown, a lot of my students are still working in a retail facility. So they were able to kind of share some of their pain points that they were feeling. And interestingly enough, a lot of their feedback recently has been customers. People are being really, really mean to them right now. And it's a little bit sad because they're providing an essential service, but just trying to help them understand that, you can't fix that mentality. So just be safe, be polite, be respectful, wash your hands, and do the best you can within that scope. It's very, very interesting. Have you seen, so I know we go to a lot of the same food safety conferences. Anybody else from JWU that you know of in the food safety field?
Yeah, so my roommate actually works for Taco Bell. He's one of their research and developers, and so he deals with a lot of their food safety and a lot of the design of some of their stuff. And then a couple of the other guys went to they did the food sciences, so in food nutrition, and now they're in the research and development industry as well. So they deal with this in the development of new foods quite frequently.
And how do you see some of the overlap on the safety standards that we deal with on the regulatory side as opposed to the research side?
So whenever they create any new items, they have to take the science into account for anything that they're creating. So a lot of that nutrition is a lot of science-based information, and there's just a lot of overlap in between the food safety and just the food science of items, whether it's microbiology or just kind of how foods interact with each other.
Yeah, I think I personally, and again, I'm a little biased because I work at the university now and I've been here for about 5 years, but I tend to see that Some of the best regulatory people that I've come into contact with recently have a culinary background. And I think it's very, very unique because, again, as self-admitted, I don't cook. I don't like to cook. It stresses me out. I could go into a kitchen and do a great food safety audit. I could find temps. I can do all these things right, but I don't always know what some of the equipment is for. So I may not always ask the right questions. And some of the colleagues that I've come into contact with that now work for Rhode Island Department of Health, a bunch of them work for Massachusetts, they can ask those leading questions because they know what that equipment is for. I mean, now that I've been here long enough, I know more. But again, with my environmental science and public health background, I didn't know some of those questions. And to me, at times, it felt almost like a disadvantage because the goal of public health is to promote and protect public health, and part of the food inspection process is to ensure people are doing things safely. And if you can't ask those proper questions, you're not addressing that immediate need. And people may have a good inspection report, and you're not really identified all their potential hazards and risks. So I totally think that, culinary background is a huge, huge advantage as either a food safety auditor, a food safety trainer, or a regulatory person for sure. Do you agree?
We get that a lot from store level, that they say, a certain board of health or somebody came in, they're saying we can't do this, or they're, something doesn't make sense to them. And then we follow up and it's like they were doing either the procedure incorrectly, or they didn't understand the equipment, or, how it's supposed to operate. And we go in and we show the stores, or we pull the board of health with us and we say, let's work together to come to a common ground. And, we're all here for the same reason, to keep everybody safe. So we work with them and we'll actually show them how equipment works or certain items are operated. And it's enlightening to them and they appreciate it. Our stores appreciate it. And it goes a long way to just pass that knowledge along, so it's not just forgotten or lost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot to be said for how you interact during an inspection. I know that some people shut down and they get really frustrated with the inspection process, maybe not understanding what the intent is. So here, actually, at Johnson & Wales, we have a great partnership with Rhode Island Department of Health and FDA, and we actually bring our inspectors in to kind of mitigate some of that fear. Because if your boss is afraid, as a student employee or as a young professional, you're going to be afraid. So really try to remove some of the hysteria and the mystique and explain that this is an educational process. The goal of the regulatory authority is not to shut you down or penalize you. It's just to identify potential hazards and make sure you're doing things safely. You don't ever have problems in Franklin, do you? Franklin's a good store, right? The Board of Health is good in
No,
Franklin? All right.
they're fantastic there. I can't say enough good things about them.
Good. We have a new director over there.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I'm the volunteer board of health chair, so I like to give a hard time when I can because we have a big Y in town.
And if I could actually interject there, for students that are considering a career in food safety and in the food service industry in general, Craig, more importantly, as an alum and Bridget as a professor, what kind of advice would you give some of your students that are looking to follow that career path? Craig,
you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, when I was in school, I mean, a lot of the microbiology stuff, I mean, it really keyed me off to kind of like, that's where I kind of started to really like nerd out into the science of it and really enjoyed a lot of that stuff. But the lab work is where we really kind of hit home with a lot of it, being able to work with other students and now, some of my best friends and roommates from school, where we lean on each other quite frequently, and other people in the industry that have gone through the same thing, saying like, hey, do you remember doing this in class? Like, why does this make sense? What are we doing? And we actually call and talk to each other quite frequently and discuss what we did in school and kind of how we're applying it to our daily lives now. So I think it really helped me in a long way.
Great. I think my biggest takeaway or my biggest advice would be not to be afraid to ask questions. There is really no wrong question. And I think sometimes some of our students come in with the fear of food safety, or they think food safety is just sanitation. And there are just such a myriad of opportunities that are related to food safety. Whether you're an internal auditor, trainer, an SQF practitioner, there's just such a huge variety of job landscape that you can pursue with a background in culinary and food safety. So ask those questions and make those connections. And we're really fortunate here to have really good industry partners. We have really good, like I said, relationships with the FDA and Rhode Island Department of Health and other health departments across the country, and they want students to succeed. Prior to the conference of food protection being canceled because of COVID, I was actually co-presenting with an inspector in Mecklenburg County as to how to better prepare our young culinarians for food safety practices and be really good advocates for food safety. So even if you're a culinarian and you don't want to have food safety be your job title, if you model that really good food safety behavior, your employees will as well, and you'll see that in your service response, you'll see that customers will come back to you more and more because unfortunately with social media, everyone's a food safety scientist. Right now, everyone's a public health scientist with COVID-19 background. But with that fast turnaround of social media, you're going to get complaints. So if you have a really good baseline of food safety, you can mitigate those complaints and you can kind of ensure food safety at all times. It's a really good pillar to have.
And Craig, through your journey through at Johnson & Wales and into your career at Big Y, what was the moment that you knew that food safety would be the career for you? What were some of those influences that kind of got you to where you're at?
So when like I mentioned, with like the microbiology and some of the science classes that we took, that was what really kind of just something clicked, and I really enjoyed the micro biologies and all that stuff that involved the sciences, and kind of I always knew the whys we were doing, the whys we were doing certain things in the kitchen, but then that really like explained like the science behind it and how foods react with each other and certain stuff, and it just really, that's kind of what keyed me off. Then after that, I actually became kind of a private contractor with a cleaning service and private training, also food safety training with it out of school, and that kind of skyrocketed that relationship with me and the kind of the food safety behind it.
That's great. That's great. So in kind of closing here, for both of you, can you share any last thoughts in terms of some advice for our audience that's watching, for our students, but even just kind of where this industry is headed in terms of food safety?
Me first, Craig, or you first?
If you want to go, you seem like you're ready to jump at that one.
I never stop talking. I think food safety is never going to go away, and we see a lot more of an emphasis on food safety, and it's just such a high level priority. I think obviously with the COVID-19 pandemic and concerns, there's a difference. Food safety is now going to be an enlarged bubble, so we're going to see additional protocols as far as possibly temperature monitoring for employees, taking checklists more appropriately, asking specific questions of your customers and guests, social distancing. So there's going to be a little bit more of a variety of what food safety entails, but it's really important that we stick to the components of food safety, cook, chill, separate, clean, and just make sure that we're always following these really good practices. I think that as far as the industry, as we rebound, food safety will be even more important because, again, our customers nationwide want that level of comfortability to know that their food handlers are safe and following, approved practices. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm the volunteer chair of the Board of Health in the town that I live in Massachusetts, which is a little bit different than Rhode Island, but we're actually going to host Zoom meetings in the next couple of weeks for all of our restaurant operators as to what we think the future will look like to try to help them better prepare to open up their doors. Because again, we understand that the industry has been pretty ravaged by this pandemic, but we know that they can come back and bounce back with really good practices. So our goal here is to offer this additional training, and if they've completed the training, they'll get like a door decal so the customers will know that they've completed additional voluntary training through the Board of Health, and maybe create another level of comfortability there. I think the other component that's sort of in line with food safety is sustainability. They seem to go hand in hand, especially because with food safety, using reusable containers and recyclables and things like that. So they're sort of, they can merge at times. So oftentimes we see food safety specialists are also sustainability advocates. So I think that the future in this industry is huge, a lot of opportunity. And again, I would encourage any current student or prospective student to reach out to us and let us know what we can do to help. And that's what I tell all of my students when they leave here. I'm still an advocate for them. So if they have questions when they're in industry, they need to reach out to me and I'll help them as best I can, because we never want that knowledge to stop, and we always want to make sure that we're sharing what we have internally. And food safety is not a competitive advantage. It's a public health goal. So we always want to make sure that we're reminding our students and our alumni and our other stakeholders that we're a resource for them. And if we don't have the answer, we can work with Department of Health and help them get that answer.
Yep, kind of jumping on the sustainability thing. Our goal as a company here, where our stores are going towards zero waste, where there's we recycle as much as we can, we compost, we do everything that we can to try to go to a zero waste facility. But on top of that, the food, as Bridget mentioned too, just the food safety is always changing. The science is always coming out with new findings or new evidence for certain things. So the food code's always constantly getting updated. So as that kind of evolves, we try to evolve as a company along with it. So we go into our stores and we retrain employees. And a lot of times it's like, why are we changing this? We haven't gotten somebody sick, but doing it this way, it's like, well, the food code's changing. There's new science backing certain things up. We have to evolve and change with it. We can't stay stagnant. So it's really important to just get everything out of it as you can.
And I think the other thing I would piggyback on, and I didn't know this when I was in school, there is oftentimes student rates for a lot of the conferences that we attend in the regional and national level. So if they're interested, students should definitely reach out to that organization and see if they can attend or even audit those conferences. It's a great networking experience. I think, Craig, were you supposed to go into this month's one before it was canceled?
Yeah.
So it's a great
networking.
It's a great networking experience from both the regulatory level, but also that industry level. So if a student wants to go into industry food safety, we have conferences multiple times a year that bring both groups together. And again, as a student or as an auditor, you won't get credit, but you can attend and kind of just figure out if that's what you're interested in. And I wish someone told me that when I was in school. I didn't realize that was an opportunity, but I would definitely advocate for that. If students are interested in this field, go to one of these conferences, pick up what you can. If you don't like it, you'll know. You don't have to pursue it. And I think I guess that's one more thing I would add, is that I never want our students to feel pigeonholed into their major of their choice. You can graduate with, food service management or a BS in sustainability or a BS, but you can still you'll be really well-rounded. It's okay to switch jobs. It's okay to switch career paths. I started as an environmental scientist. I didn't know the public health was going to be my thing. So I always tell the students what you want today may change, and that's okay. You can always use this foundational education here to propel you into the future. It's never going to be a disadvantage.
Yeah, and I would say too, while they're in school, to just take out the opportunity and join everything that they can while they can. They're not going to be there forever, but while they're there, the college offers a lot. Whether it was like internships that I got to go on, there was a lot of experiences that I don't think a lot of other friends that went to college, even for similar I guess degrees, they didn't have the same opportunities that I had going to Johnson & Wales. And I think I thought it was my best choice for sure.
So Craig, when you were here, did you get to do inspections? I bring the students on inspections with me of other labs now, so they can be inspectors. And what I find the best success is that they're like, oh, they think they see things so much faster, but they did the same thing the day before. And they're like, oh, I do that too. So it's been a new fun. The past year we started doing it with our advanced students, and it's pretty fun to see the evolution of them realizing something that they didn't realize was a violation now is so easy for them to pick out.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. You realize habits that you've picked up along the way that have always been, a personal habit in the kitchen. You're like, wow, I can't do that anymore. That's not allowed. And, it's kind of laughable looking back saying, how did we get away with that for so long? And then it's like, okay, well, the science changed. Now you can't do that. Sorry.
It's funny.
No, this is wonderful. We really appreciate you taking your time to share some of your advice and expertise, and really kind of highlighting the value of Johnson & Wales education and how it's influenced really both your paths as a professor and that hands-on experience in the community and the industry, and Craig, how it really has influenced you on your career path all the way to Big Y. So I really appreciate you guys sharing some of this great information. And to all of you exploring at home, I would like to thank you for listening, and stay tuned for our next video series and topic where we can tell you a little bit more of what's happening at JWU. So thanks for exploring from home, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.